for living that fueled his perseverance through all the hows of life. How am I going to make it through slavery? How am I going to make it through prison? He wouldn't quit because he felt he couldn't quit. What about you? Have you ever been in a place like that? Have you ever felt like you wanted to give up on something, but if you did, the world would be missing something that it needed? Or maybe have you ever felt like you wanted to quit, but if you did, you'd let someone down that you just couldn't let down? Let me ask it this way. Many of us are persevering through very difficult situations right now. Why are you persevering? Why are you persevering through a difficult situation, or a difficult job, or a difficult relationship, or even a difficult body? Do you believe it will get better? Are you hanging on to that hope that it will? If we don't hang on to that hope, if we don't look for the reason, the why, to hang on through the how, what could happen is that circumstances will begin to mold us and shape us. And oftentimes when that happens, we become hurt, we become cynical, and we become bitter. Where I grew up, as I said before, we lived right next to Mount Diablo, right across the street from the state park. And there was all kinds of, when it would rain, all kinds of springs and creeks that would come down the mountain. And we explored every square inch we could find on Mount Diablo. And there's this one creek that was our favorite because it had a reservoir, 2 different ones, and we would climb all over it. And then if you follow the creek long enough, I think about a half mile into the mountain, I don't know, but far. You have to get way past all the paths. You have to make it your own. There was this rock. It was like a tower. It was about as tall as the ceiling, so probably about 25 feet. And at the very base of the rock, the creek hit it and went all the way around it. But at the base, there was this big tower and then a part of it that kind of jetted out, and that's what made the peninsula, if you will. Well, right in the middle of that, this is all made of granite, tough rock. The whole thing, the texture is just gritty, and it's rough, and you don't want to play on it. But right in the middle of it was this perfect water slide. I mean, the water over years had worn it so smooth that we would, even when there was no water, we would slide down it. It was only like 8 to 10 feet. We thought it was awesome. Never saw it with water running in it in all the 16 years I lived out there. But it was one of the coolest things. And we'd go there, we'd play around in that area in the water and whatnot and try and enjoy this water slide that had been provided for us by the elements. Well, years of water had shaped the rock. The rock let something outside of it and unconnected to it to shape it. As followers of Jesus, we should only let what is connected to our soul shape us. If we let some outside force mold us, we run the risk of becoming someone less than we could be. Joseph resisted this by cultivating perseverance. He would not let outside forces define him. He hung on and remained a hero that God was pleased with. Even when life gave him reasons to be angry, when life gave him reasons to be hurt, when life gave him reasons to be bitter, that we would probably be like, yeah, I can understand that. He didn't do it. He cultivated perseverance, and that's one of the reasons that made him a hero. Here's the third thought, and the last one. Joseph caught God's perspective. In chapter 45, verse 5, I read this to you a moment ago, but I want to repeat it. But don't be upset, Joseph speaking to his brothers again, and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. You've heard the saying, your hindsight is 20/20. Have you heard that saying before? This thought speaks directly to that idea. It deals with having a proper perspective. Albert Einstein said, in the middle of every difficulty lies opportunity. And then Winston Churchill expanded on that, and he said, the pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity, but the optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. The pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity. The optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. Perspective is a matter of choice. Joseph decided to catch God's perspective instead of all the other perspectives that were available. Imagine the ancient conversation that's taking place in a jail cell somewhere between Joseph and an inmate. And Joseph's telling him about how his God is so great. And his brothers betrayed him and threw him into a pit, faked his death, and then sold him into slavery. And then he was framed for attempted rape, and he ended up in that prison. He was innocent, but God had brought them on this path. If I heard that story, much like I think the inmate may be hearing this conversation, I would be like, wow, I do not want to serve your God. Is that what's going to happen to me? Here's one outside perspective. Joseph's perspective was completely different. And from God's perspective, it was the best path to put Joseph on. It led to a supernatural and a heroic outcome. There was no other way for Joseph to end up in front of the most powerful man in the world at that time that was looking for his skills and his advice. But God, through this entire path, through this perspective, had brought him there. Imagine if the second year Joseph was in prison, he decided that was it, he'd had enough, and was going to end his life. What would have happened? When the famine hit, years down the road, thousands and thousands and thousands of lives would have been lost. Today we have the One campaign that's trying to fight global AIDS and global poverty. Joseph started the first One campaign. He's way bigger than Bono because he literally saved the world. Joseph did that in Scripture. We see how he did it. He was a hero. But if he had given up a little bit too soon, we'd never know the story, and history would be forever changed. On catching God's perspective, we have to go looking for it. Where's my high school students at? There's two. All right, good. They're an exciting bunch. Let me just tell you that. After service in our high school group, we have this game that I have invented called Sniper Ball. And all it is you take a dodgeball and you throw it at someone who's not looking across the room. It's a great game. Please don't feel like there's any malice or anything like that. But the idea is that someone's trying to clean up, and they're talking to a friend, and a ball hits them in the head out of nowhere. Nobody gets hurt yet. It's a lot of fun. Everyone else enjoys it. We take it and we give it. It's a fair exchange. It has morphed into many other versions of Sniper Ball. I'm not going to get into that, but it's a lot of fun. But the funny thing is, once the first time the ball gets thrown, everyone is on the lookout. And the happiest players of Sniper Ball are those who see the ball coming, because they can move, they can dodge it, they can catch it, and they're much happier. The unhappiest player is the one who gets hit and never sees it coming. But those are also the funniest players. On catching God's perspective, we have to go looking for it. It's not going to fall in your lap. It's something that we need to keep our eyes open for. To catch God's perspective, we need to follow the principle of wisdom that looks to how is God fitting this in? How is God fitting my journey into the big overall picture of what God is doing around the world? A lot of times we get caught up in what we want, and we think our life revolves around us. But God is trying to work the lives of 6 billion people to get something accomplished. And believe me, God is working around the world in places we probably have no idea. And sometimes God might be leading or directing us to affect a person we never even knew existed. That's what was happening with Joseph. Joseph's situation, he probably thought when he was a young teenager, having all these dreams about and aspirations for the future, he probably wasn't thinking, I would love to do some time in slavery. I would love to see what the inside of a jail cell was like for a couple years. I don't think that was on his agenda. But he did it with the right perspective. And the outcome was amazing. It was heroic. Because once again, thousands of lives were saved. Recently for Father's Day, we took our family and the kids down to the beach at Santa Cruz. Andrew and I, we got married when we were down in that area. We love that area, and we visit it from time to time. And Maddox, my son, he loves the beach. And the kid is 100% adventure. And so whenever we go to the beach, you have to hold his hand basically 100% of the time, because he will go straight to the water. And he has no idea what's going to happen if he walks in. Well, here's him, this tall. By my sheer size, I have a better perspective. By my experience and knowledge about the water and sharks and sea anemones and undertow, I know what could happen to him. So I keep a hand on him because I have a different perspective than my son. I see things he doesn't even know exists. But I also see things that will be a lot of fun. While we were there, someone had dug a giant hole, and he had this great time jumping into it. Well, then it was time for us to go, and I walked him away. And I thought that was good timing, because 2 minutes afterward, we hadn't even made it back to our umbrella yet. A giant wave had come and filled in that hole, and he would have been covered in water. That was just random. It was just good timing. But I knew at some point the tide was coming in. At some point, we're going to get really wet, and it's cold because it's California water. And I don't want to do that. Well, like I said, I knew there were things there that Maddox had no idea existed. God is the very same. God's perspective is much higher than ours. God can see things that are coming that we don't even know exist. That doesn't mean God is doing it. And I think we have to be very careful to make that distinction. But God knows things are coming, and